My name is Catherine Moravec, and I'm a Senior Water Conservation Specialist with Colorado Springs Utilities, and we are going to be talking about September highlights from the Waterwise Demonstration Garden tonight. So thanks again for joining us. I think this will be really helpful to you. So here's what we're going to be talking about tonight. I'm just going to give you just a brief overview of how to visit the garden, what you can find here. Then we're going to talk about plants that really have fantastic, fabulous fruits. Then we'll talk about plants with spectacular seed heads, plants with colorful crimson colors. We'll just have one slide on how to winter water, and then I'll just review our recorded webinars that we have available to you. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So anyway, if you haven't been to our Waterwise Demonstration Garden, I would certainly encourage you to come and pay a visit, especially in the fall. It is a fantastic place to look for ideas and resources to help your landscape become more interesting in the fall and winter months. The folks that developed and planned this garden really did a great job, and so it is a wonderful place to visit in the fall. So the primary garden that we have is located at 2855 Mesa Road, and then we have a second garden in front of the Cottonwood Creek Recreation Center at 3920 Dublin Boulevard. Both of these gardens are open during daylight hours and are free and open to the public. So feel free to come and take a visit, and hopefully you can get lots of ideas about how to create a waterwise landscape that thrives in the Pikes Peak region. So the garden at 2855 Mesa Road, that is our central garden. That comprises about 2 acres of demonstration, and we feature about 300 different types of plants here at the garden. It was installed in 1990 to 1991, so we are coming up on our 30th anniversary this year, which is really exciting. The Cottonwood Creek Garden was installed in 2006, so it's a much smaller garden. We give it less maintenance, so if you're looking for really tough, low maintenance plants, that can be a great resource for you. And especially if you live on the northeastern side of Colorado Springs, it might be more convenient for you to visit. So certainly keep that in mind as a resource. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to plants with fabulous fruits. So I've been really watching all the plants here at the Waterwise Demonstration Garden. I do that on a routine basis. And I just wanted to share with you that this month in September, we've really had a nice display of plants that have fruit, that are visually interesting and provide food for birds. So this is a great way to get fall interest into your landscape. So oftentimes when we're planning our landscapes, we think about spring flowers or summer flowers, but the fruit can also be a really important part of the overall look of a plant as well as its function. So the first plant I want to talk about is red leaf rose. So this is a type of rose that is a large shrub. It typically grows to be about 6 to 8 feet tall, and it has these dark bluish red leaves throughout the growing season, and that's why it's called red leaf rose. In the springtime, it has very simple pink flowers that have a white center. So the flowers are nice, but not particularly showy. But this is a very drought-tolerant, resilient rose that you can use here in Colorado Springs. The thing that I love about this plant is that in the fall, it creates these rose hips that are this bright red, vibrant color that hang on the plant for quite a while. And the nice thing is that when you have this contrast of the kind of bluish green leaves with this red tinges, with these red hips, it is really attractive in the fall. So certainly worth considering adding to your landscape, and much more water-wise than many of the roses out there on the market. Here's another view of that plant, and you can see that the hips really do cover a lot of the branches. So wonderfully vibrant and attractive in fall. I think if we looked at the plant that has the first place award-winning berries or fruits in the demonstration garden, it really is Russian hawthorn. You know, Russian hawthorn is a tree. It's a small tree that does really well here in Colorado. It's got these beautiful green leaves, and the flowers turn into these vibrant, bright red fruits in the fall. Now these will hang on to the tree for a while, and as they go through several freeze cycles, then the birds will start to eat them and remove them from the tree. But it goes through this really nice period of these bright red glossy fruits and is certainly worth considering adding to your landscape. Now here is a picture of the same tree when it's just starting to come into bloom in late May. The flowers are nice and the leaves are really pretty. Now the flowers do have kind of a strange scent. Some people don't find it very pleasing. So this would be one that you might want to site a little bit farther away from a patio or a central entrance into your home. So certainly something that can tolerate a low water irrigation zone. Just maybe, or just stay away from it when it's in bloom because the fragrance is a little odd. But once those berries come into fruit in the fall, it is an amazing, amazing plant. The thing that's so nice about Russian hawthorn as well is that it has beautiful bark and a great structure in the winter. So when it captures the snow, it looks really attractive. So this is certainly something that we would consider a 4-season plant, especially as the leaves turn yellow in the fall, contrasting with the red fruit. Really, really nice. Another plant that I would like to talk about is firethorn or pyracantha. Now these are large shrubs that are typically about, in the 8 to 10 foot category, tall and wide. So oftentimes you'll see them in older landscapes, and you can go the whole entire summer without even noticing a firethorn. And then when it develops these bright orange berries in the fall, it is extremely eye-catching. The thing that's nice about these berries too is that you can clip them and use the branches in wreaths and fall crafts, and they hold up quite well. So if you're someone who likes to grow things in your landscape and then implement them into other parts of your decor in your home, firethorn is worth growing. Now keep in mind that it does have really strong thorns, so this can make a good hedge plant or a barrier plant, but you might want to site it slightly away from an area where you're going to be rubbing up against the branches because those thorns are something else. Now pyracantha is definitely a plant that has white flowers in the spring, but because it is kind of just this large green shrub, it's not that noticeable throughout most of the growing season until those berries are produced. Now, there are some smaller cultivars of pyracantha that you can get in the nursery trade that might be worth considering. This is definitely a plant that has been cultivated in the nursery trade for many years. So it's not something that I think we normally talk about, but in the month of September, it is really in top form and worth considering. There are some birds that like to eat the berries. So once again, another reason to plant it in your landscape. The nice thing about these firethorn berries is they do persist into winter as well. So really eye-catching, bright, colorful, and very cheery in the fall. All right, let's move on to prickly pear. So prickly pear is one of those plants that I think of as, of course, a cold hardy cactus. Most of them tend to be kind of at the ground level. Our native ones are relatively small, but there's lots and lots of different cultivars of prickly pear that have been developed for the nursery trade. And some of these prickly pears, even though they have these really stunning flowers when they're in bloom, maybe bright pink, orange, or yellow, even white, and they have these multi-petaled flowers that the bees really love, some cultivars have these really stunning fruits. So this one in particular at the Waterwise Demonstration Garden is really close to a little footbridge right next to a pot. And it has had these attractive fruits on it for a couple months, and they do persist into winter as well. So this particular cultivar is one that I think is really worthwhile to use as an example of having a really water-wise plant that has this bonus of flowers, but really its most ornamental value is the fruit. Now, I don't have a list of particular cultivars to share with you, but I would certainly keep an eye out for those cultivars that do have attractive fruit, because there are many prickly pears that have fruit that either disappears or isn't really that attractive. But the ones that have attractive fruit, really worth considering. All right, let's move on. I do want to talk a little bit about Alleghany Viburnum. This is once again another large shrub. There are cultivars that are shorter in stature, like Judd Viburnum or Mohican Viburnum. And once again, these are shrubs that tend to sort of appear in the background. So not something that you would normally use as an accent plant, but something more as a structural element in your landscape. One thing that's nice about Alleghany Viburnum and Mohican Viburnum is that they do have relatively wide leaves. So many of our really drought tolerant plants tend to have smaller leaves, and these contrast nicely with plants that have small leaves or burgundy foliage or lighter green, because it has this heftier leaf that's fuzzy. In fact, another name for viburnum is leather leaf shrubs. So you can kind of get the sense of what the leaves are like. This is a selection that is part of the Plant Select program, which is a cooperative effort between Colorado State University Extension, Denver Botanic Gardens, and the nursery trade. And this is a fantastic shrub. It has these beautiful white clusters of flowers in the spring that are really attractive. And then once those are done flowering, they mature into these black and red berries. So this is a picture that I took today that really showcases the texture of the leaves and the variation in color of the berries. Once again, the birds do like to eat these as well, and so it's a great way to support the birds that come and visit your yard. But the extra bonus of Alleghany Viburnum is its fantastic fall color. Now, it hasn't quite turned just yet this year, so September it's kind of going to persist being this nice green leaf, but once we start to get some really cool temperatures and even those first fall frosts, you will see this plant have such bright, vibrant burgundy leaves that it really closes out the season beautifully. In the winter time, those leaves fall off and you have this beautiful structure of branches, but I would definitely say that fall is a high season for this particular shrub. All right, I do want to just share something with the Waterwise Demonstration Garden this year. We have this vegetable garden area in our garden where we have planted corn or sunflowers on the back side of the fence for a couple years now. And it's been really fun, but we decided to try something else to kind of, maybe make our work in our vegetable garden just a little bit less. So this year I ordered a lot of bare root raspberry canes that showed up, I think the third week in April. And they come through mail order and they're about 6 inches long with some straggly roots on the end. And they come packed in a plastic bag with shredded paper, and you take them out and then plant them in the soil. I planted them along this Netafim Tech Line drip irrigation right here. So this is drip irrigation that has the emitters manufactured into the pipe. So there's an emitter here and another emitter here and another emitter here. And you can see that I just put these raspberry plants into the ground, put the soil back in place, and then we watered them with the drip irrigation all summer. Now, I was kind of worried because we actually had quite a few snowstorms after I planted this, and so a lot of these buds that were ready to break got killed by the cold temperatures. And I thought, oh no, this is going to be unfortunate that we'll lose all these plants, but let's see what happens. So this is a picture that I took today, and I was really thrilled to see that not only did we get nice large canes growing from those original plants, but they're also starting to send up runners and we have a lot of small canes that are starting to grow right here. So this is really exciting that you can plant these bare root raspberry plants and have them succeed. One reason why I think is because they got consistent moisture through this drip line. So certainly something to consider if you want to grow fruit in your own landscape, that it might be worth investing in some drip irrigation, especially the Netafim Tech line, to make it easy to water these plants. And, you know, not all these canes are going to make it through the winter, but it's certainly exciting that they're starting to establish and will persist into next year. The other thing that's exciting is that we're actually starting to get some fruit here. So these flowered this summer and the fruit is starting to develop. Now, being the last week in September, I'm not quite sure that these are actually going to mature into edible fruit before we get a frost, but it is exciting to see that we hope that we will be able to get some raspberries next spring. All right, so next I want to move on to some plants that have really spectacular seed heads. So the first plant that I want to talk about is Fourwing Saltbush. This is a shrub that is native to the western half of the United States. You find it all throughout Colorado Springs, especially on the west side. And for the most of the year, it's kind of this bluish gray shrub that grows to be about 2 or 3 or 4 feet tall. Very, very drought tolerant, very tolerant of salty soils. So it makes a really good reclamation plant. In fact, over by Garden of the Gods Park, you will notice that there's Fourwing Saltbush on these road cuts where you will see it growing in the side of these hillsides with amazing tenacity. So it's a fantastic plant if you have a really dry location or you back up to natural area. It's a wonderful choice and can survive with very little supplemental moisture. So as I mentioned, this particular plant doesn't look very attractive throughout the whole entire summer, or I should say very noticeable, but in the fall, the female plants will develop these really attractive seeds that really kind of contrast with the blue foliage because they're sort of yellow in color, and then they will cover the plant and really look nice. Now keep in mind that Fourwing Saltbush is one of these strange plants that you will either notice you have a male individual plant or a female individual plant. So the male plants will produce these flowers that are really not that noticeable, and they produce the pollen. They fertilize the female plants, and the female plants are the ones that will produce the seeds. Now, the strange thing about Fourwing Saltbush is that one individual plant can switch between being a male plant or a female plant over a period of years. So my suggestion would be to you to go to a nursery in the fall and pick one out that has seed heads and hope that it stays as a female, so you get those beautiful seeds for the rest of its life. The good thing is that if a plant has a little extra moisture, it will most likely be a female plant and produce the seeds. The male plants are the ones that typically are in very harsh conditions, very dry conditions. So as long as you give your plant a little extra water, it's very likely to remain as a female. These seeds can be ground into an edible flour. I've never personally tried that, but I think it would be fun to try. But just want to show you another picture of the seed heads, which are so beautiful and have this kind of papery covering to them, and really are in top condition right now as we speak. Another plant that's looking really great at the Waterwise Demonstration Garden is Smoky Hills Skullcap. This is a really wonderful plant that is about 1 foot tall and wide. It is native to the southern Great Plains, so definitely native to the eastern plains of Colorado. And it grows as a tiny little clump of green leaves. And then in late spring, it produces all these beautiful cobalt blue flowers with these little white markings. Now, the nice thing about this particular plant is that even in September, though the flowers are mostly long gone, those flower spikes have matured into these beautiful seed heads. And so it looks really tidy, it looks well kept, and it's got a great structure going into fall and winter. So something definitely to consider as a front of the garden, front of the plant bed type of plant, or maybe even a perfect addition for rock gardens. I find this one to be very cold hardy if you get the Smoky Hills Skullcap. And it just seems to be perfectly suited to our Colorado Springs area. Another plant that I'd like to share with you is wild blue indigo. This is one that we've talked about quite a bit, Baptisia australis. This is native to a little bit east of Colorado, but certainly a native North American plant that is really, really attractive. Now, this particular plant at this time of year has these gorgeous black glossy seed pods, and they stick up on these spikes above these deep green leaves that grow as a sphere in this 3 to 4 foot wide and tall mound. So a really attractive plant. This is one that we do not deadhead. We do not cut off the seed heads because the seed pods are so attractive. Now over time, these seed pods will kind of open up and fall down, and then you end up with just this stalk that's sticking up above the leaves, and we do cut that off. But these black seed pods look really nice when this plant goes into fall color because the leaves are a bright, bright yellow, and it is really an attractive one in the fall. This is what the flowers look like when it's in bloom in late May, but you can see how attractive the flowers are, and to get that interest from the flowers and then into the seed heads makes this plant a really nice one to consider for your landscape. Now it is a perennial plant, meaning that the growth will die back all the way to ground level over the winter, but this is really a nice shrub-like size, being 3 to 4 feet tall and wide. So if you're looking for something to put by your front door or as a foundation planting, or even if you have a larger plant bed where you're looking for something kind of in that mid-range, really, really a nice plant to consider. This is another plant that we've talked quite a bit about this year, but I took these pictures today and I just think it's spectacular. This is Undaunted ruby muhly grass, which has these infamous clouds of pink seed heads in September and even into October. So if you're walking through the Waterwise demonstration garden in the morning or even in the late evening, as this becomes backlit, it is just a stunning plant. It works really well as an accent plant or also as a filler plant. So it is something that you can use either way. If you're going to use it as an accent plant, I would give it some space around it. You know, this will probably be 3 to 4 feet wide and maybe 3 feet tall. So the more you want it to be a standalone plant, the more space you need to give it. If you want to use it as a filler, it's okay to space it closer to the plants that are around it. This is the central parking island in our front parking lot. And I think we've shown a lot of you pictures of this area earlier in the spring when the catmint was in bloom and when we had allium bulbs blooming in this area. But this is what it looks like today, and it is gorgeous because the grasses are now taking center stage. So in this bed we have Santa Fe phlox, which is this native perennial flower right here, and this has been blooming all summer with these bright pink leaves. In the springtime, we have little Trudy catmint, which you can see is right here, and then tucked over here. And that gives us the spikes of purple flowers and gray foliage in late spring and into early summer. And then, you know, when these grasses come into flower and then into seed later in the summer, it is really a beautiful showcase. So these 3 plants are really filling this center island with 2 crab apples that are multi-stem trees, and it's just a fantastic combination and something you can definitely use in your own landscape. Now this is Undaunted ruby muley grass playing more of a supporting role in a landscape. This is on the northwest side of the Waterwise demonstration garden. And you can see we have these nice pink sandstone boulders tucked into this landscape. We have buffalo grass that is growing in between as kind of just a ground cover plant, just covering the soil. It never gets any taller than that. We have blonde ambition blue grama grass that is really in its full glory at this time of year. And then these pink clouds kind of tucked in are that ruby muley grass. So once again, you can create such a beautiful landscape just with grasses here in the Pikes Peak region, because so much of our landscapes are naturally grasslands. So by using this technique and using these improved cultivars of native plants, you can create something that makes a beautiful landscape and is extremely easy to maintain. Now here's another example on the entrance side of our demonstration garden. This is about halfway down Mesa Road. And you can see we have ruby muley grass right here in the foreground in this case. And we have sunset hyssop right here, which it's still in bloom. It's been in bloom since July and is really supporting butterflies at this time of year. As the painted ladies come through town and even the hummingbirds, they love to get the nectar from this sunset hyssop. And as a more upright grass, we have Mexican feather grass right here with this light blonde color that is certainly the star of the show earlier in the growing season. In the mid-growing season, the sunset hyssop really takes center stage, and then in the fall, the ruby muley grass. Now this is another combination that you can just maintain once per year by cutting all of these plants back to ground level in February or March. So if you're looking for a low maintenance combination of plants for your landscape that is low water and very doable, this is something that would be worth considering as well. All right, now this is another grass that normally throughout the year doesn't garner that much attention. This is Sideoats Grama. This is a very, very common native grass here in El Paso County. It's all over the UCCS natural areas. It grows all the way through Garden of the Gods and farther south. So certainly something that is well adapted and native to El Paso County. Extremely drought tolerant plant that once established doesn't need very much supplemental irrigation. But what I love about Sideoats Grama is that even though it's not that noticeable as a bunch grass during the growing season, at this time of year in September, it produces these seed heads where all the seeds hang on one or two sides of the stem. And that's why it's called Sideoats Grama. Now, it is such a beautiful seed head, even though it's not that showy or noticeable. It's something that at this time of year will really stop you in your tracks and just look like some pearls on a necklace. These particular seeds are a favorite food for birds. So they will come in and pick off all the seeds throughout the fall. So these stalks will just be, bare after a few weeks, but at this time of year, they're so, so beautiful and really can highlight the amazing native plants that we have here in El Paso County. Another plant that you might want to consider as something that is a beautiful seed head is coneflower. Now there are many different types of species of coneflower. This is Tennessee coneflower that is growing in an area where we have blue grama grass primarily. And this one plant of Tennessee coneflower has hung on and is just stunning. There are, as I mentioned, so many different cultivars of coneflower that are not only species, but many developed cultivars by horticulturists and plant breeders. But as these beautiful purple, pink, or white flower petals fade, then it is this central dark cone that persists on these tall stalks that reach above usually the plants below it. So really a wonderful way to get kind of this spherical form on a stalk into your fall and winter landscapes. Once again, definitely food for birds. So consider planting coneflower. Now, many of the coneflowers are more of a moderate water plant, so you might want to consider planting those in a flower bed area that's going to be watered 2 times per week, and then 1 time per week in the spring and fall. But I think a little extra moisture for echinacea or coneflower really helps it persist over time. All right, so now I just want to follow up with a few plants that have bright red leaves in the fall. Now here in Colorado, we don't have a lot of natural or native plants that have red fall color. So most of our plants will typically be in the gold or yellow color tones. So how do you get that extra red into your landscape to really create a variety of fall leaf color? Well, I'd like to share with you 4 different plants that are very water-wise and certainly worth considering if you'd like to work some red fall color into your landscape. The first one is flame maple, also known as amber maple. This is a smaller tree that typically is grown as either a single stem or a multi-stem plant. These are very common in the nursery trade and easy to find for sale. They typically are about maybe 12 to 20 feet tall and wide. They have green leaves throughout the year and the flowers are not that noticeable, but this plant is just stunning. When it has a good year for fall color, it is amazing, and that's why it's called flame maple. So this is something that you might want to consider adding to your landscape. I think that the Tatarian maples in general are really wonderful plants, and this one, even though it doesn't have the bright red seed heads that say like a hot wings maple might have during the growing season, the fall color can really be worth it. This is a photograph from a commercial landscape kind of up by the Briargate area. So this is definitely achievable here in Colorado Springs and can be a wonderful plant to consider. Another plant you might want to think about is Pawnee Butte's sand cherry. Now, sand cherry is a native plant, Colorado, but the Pawnee Butte's cultivar is this shorter, spreading, low shrub. So it might be 6 feet across at maturity, but maybe only 6 to 12 inches tall. So definitely something that can be used in parkways or lower areas where you want to keep something short, but you want to keep it wide. It could also work really well in a larger plant bed in the front of that, or even on a hillside if you want a shrub to cover that. Pawnee Butte sand cherry has very glossy green leaves, but before it leaves out in the spring, it produces all these beautiful white flowers. The flowers do not turn into a fruit, but instead you get these bright red leaves in the fall. So white flowers in April, glossy green leaves throughout the growing season, and then bright red fall color in the fall. Another native plant that often gets really good fall color is three-leaf sumac. Now, three-leaf sumac is a native shrub that you see all throughout Colorado Springs in naturalized areas. So definitely something that is right at home here in the Pikes Peak region. During the growing season, it doesn't have a lot of really stunning characteristics, but it does have glossy green leaves. So even now, if you look out into these natural areas and you have this beautiful tan and yellowish grass, you can have these big spots of green as three-leaf sumac. But what I love about three-leaf sumac is that even though it doesn't have very noticeable flowers and tiny furry berries, in the fall, it can get a spectacular show of yellow, orange, and red tones. So this is something that is starting to just change color right now. And depending on how the weather persists throughout the next few weeks, we could be in store for a really beautiful autumn season. On the years where we get early fall frost, then the leaves just fall off and turn brown and it just goes dormant and comes back the following year. So this is something that we can get a good fall show, and sometimes maybe we don't, but a good plant to put in your landscape just because it's so water wise and so reliable and adaptable. The last plant that I'm going to talk about tonight is little bluestem. Oftentimes we think of great fall color in terms of trees and shrubs, but our ornamental grasses really do have the ability to bring in other red tones as well. And I think little bluestem is the best in terms of red fall color. Little bluestem is a native grass to Colorado Springs, but when we grow it as an ornamental plant, it really has this very nice, upright, narrow structure, similar to Karl Forster featherweed grass. It's a little shorter than Karl Forster, but definitely has that upright, tidy form. There are several different cultivars of little bluestem available in the nursery trade, but my two favorites are Standing Ovation, which are featured in this particular photograph, and also another cultivar called the Blues. Now, the Blues has a much more blue leaf color during the growing season, so it contrasts really nicely with other plants around it. But Standing Ovation is definitely selected to be upright and resistant to getting crushed, so that's another great quality. Both of these two cultivars have really nice red fall color, and I think this is where you're going to see the best integration of those crimson tones into your fall landscape. So definitely consider adding those to any area where you'd like to have nice red colors into the fall and even into the winter. Once we get into early spring, these will fade a little bit, but that's when you need to cut them to the ground anyway. So they're great plants. Now, I did want to just mention that as we go into October here in the Colorado Springs area, it is important to think about winter watering. Most people definitely shut off their sprinkler systems in October, which is a wise decision to be able to prevent freeze damage from damaging your sprinkler system. But oftentimes we can get very extended dry periods throughout the winter months here in Colorado Springs. And if we get warm temperatures, that can cause plants to start to use water. And if they go for too long, 6-7 months without any irrigation, then you can start to see winter kill and plant death. So if we end up with extended dry conditions with warm weather during our winter months, it is worthwhile to consider winter watering. How you do this is you just choose a day during these winter months when your sprinkler system is turned off where the air temperature is above 40 degrees and there's no snow or ice on the area that you're going to winter water. And you can put out some cans or some containers in the area where you're going to winter water, grab a hose, connect it to your spigot with a sprinkler or a watering wand, and just water long enough so that you collect on average about a ½ inch depth of water in your containers. That's when you've watered enough. So we're not trying to water sufficiently to support plant growth. You're just trying to moisten the crown of the plant and the root zone to prevent the plant from dehydrating and dying. So the plants that you might want to consider winter watering would be your deciduous trees, maybe even your evergreen trees, any lawn areas, especially those that are on south-facing slopes or very exposed. And then even if you tackle those, your other plants can also benefit from winter watering, but your top priorities should really be your trees and then any lawn areas where you've got susceptible to winter kill. Make sure you disconnect the hose from the spigot once you're done winter watering to avoid any type of freeze damage. We have posted most of the webinars that we've recorded this growing season at csu.org. So when we get everything posted, you'll have 15 webinars that you can go back and look at any time to refresh your memory or to delve into another topic. And this covers the whole breadth of water-wise landscaping, from plant selection to irrigation techniques to getting to know your sprinkler system and a lot of different design topics. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. I would like to thank you all once again for joining us. We appreciate you learning about water-wise landscaping. We wish you the best with your landscape.